Welcome to the how to replace a VHS cassette case tutorial video. If you collect VHS, you often find situations like this, where the tape you just purchased, it's missing the flap. Now the tape should be able to play like this, but it's better if we replace this case. The reason for it is that as long as this tape is exposed, it's attracting foreign particles. We definitely don't want to get that inside our VHS. Things we need a very few tools, and we will also need a donor tape. The tools we will use can be purchased at any dollar store, very low cost. We will need a number 1 or number 2 Phillips screwdriver. Here's 2 examples. We will need a small piece of Scotch tape, or, as I would use, some spare labels. And we will also need a microfiber cloth, also from the dollar store. So in tools, $3 spent. We will also need a donor tape. That is the tape we will be using the case from to rescue our valuable Space Camp video. And I have chosen Practical Magic. If you collect VHS, you will know there's no shortage of donor tapes available. When I choose a donor tape, I like to use later generation tapes just to ensure that the case is going to be, the plastic is going to be recent. It's not going to be brittle. I make sure that the flap works okay. We can press the little button here, make sure that it works okay. Doesn't have any cracks. It's not missing any screws. So this is good. We will be using that. The first thing to do with our original tape, so we want to use the microfiber and clean off that area of exposed tape. Before we do that, with our finger, we just spool it up a little bit, increase the tension. You don't need to do it too much, just that the tape has tension on it. We use a clean side of our microfiber cloth and wipe in one direction. Once or twice is enough. Once we do that, we make sure that we rewind our tape. So I will be putting that in the VCR, or even better if you have a videotape rewinder, and just go ahead and rewind it to the beginning. So we'll do that. Let's put that to the side. For now, we're going to be taking our donor tape apart. We'll make sure we're working on a clean surface. All VHS tapes were made to the same standard. They all have the same amount of screws, and the screws are in the same locations, but there are exceptions. I would say 98% of the tapes you're going to run into are going to look like this, the original VHS standard. Now, the exception tapes were made as promotional tapes, disposable tapes, if you will, and they're actually glued together. This would be a promotional tape, and as you can see, it does not have any screw holes. It does not even have any tape windows on it. The flap does not have a hinge. It's actually just a little plastic flexible bit, because these were made to be as promotional items, disposable. They were made as cheap as possible. Now, these are a bit harder to take apart should you feel the need to take one apart, but that will be the subject for another video. For now, we're going to work with the more common type of tape. Okay, the first step, we're going to use a small piece of tape, or in this case I'm just going to use a plain label. We're going to attach that tape, this is just a temporary thing, in this area right here, over the flap. What this is going to do, once we take the tape apart, we don't want the flap to just come off anywhere, because it has a small spring right here. So the tape is going to prevent that. So that's step number 1. So we put the tape on a flat surface, upside down, and we locate the screw positions. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These are your average screws that you would find on the tape. On the common tapes, they're all the same. So If you use several donor cassettes, you can keep a spare few just in case you lose them. So that's one. That's two. And we continue taking out the screws. Okay, we have a total of 5 screws. Now we're ready to take the case apart. To do that, we hold the tape together, put it back in its upright position, and we go ahead and pull the top cover straight up. Now this is going to be our donor disc, so we want to make sure that none of the little rollers get lost. Okay, so we're looking good shape. We're not going to take off the spools just yet. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and get the original tape we want to save ready for the transfer. Okay, our original tape is rewound, so we take it apart similar to how we did before to the donor tape. 5 screws, they're all going to be in the same location. And the screws are all the same, so you don't have to be afraid of mixing them up. That's one. That's two. That's 3. Four, and number 5. Okay, all the screws are out. So now we hold our tape by the sides, making sure that both halves stay together. Flip it over, and just like before, remove the top straight up. Make sure it doesn't get caught anywhere. Make sure that there's no tapes on the side keeping it from coming apart. Okay. The top portion should not have any rollers attached to it. It came off cleanly. So this one is done for. We can go ahead and get rid of it. Now we can take a look at the structure of the tape. We can see how it's going to be spooled. The tape is going to go around on this side of the pin, between the pin and this little plastic flap right here. It's going to go around this big metal bushing, around the plastic, and then in between the metal bushing and the plastic bushing. So now it's time for the actual transfer. We get our donor tape, place it close together, makes things a little bit easier. We go ahead and remove the tapes that we don't want straight up. That's the tapes by themselves. Get rid of that. Make sure that none of these cams came out, and all of our pins are in place, and our bushings as well. So now we go ahead and very carefully take the tape we want to save, This one's done for. Make sure your hands are clean. We spool the tape If you need to move this cam out of the way, you just go ahead and push it with your finger. And as you can see, the first step, the tape is behind this small pin, in between the pin and this flap, and it goes around this bushing. So now we keep a little bit of tension on the tape. If you have to touch the tape itself, sometimes it can't be avoided, but do try to just grab it from the back, because that is the side of the tape that doesn't actually touch the drums on the BHS machine. So we slide the tape between the metal bushing and the plastic bushing, nice and straight. Move the little cam out of the way, right here, and it's in. We make sure of our work behind this small pin, in between the pin and the flap, around the bushing, in between the metal bushing and plastic bushing. So now we just spool them up a little bit, get a little bit of tension, and we get our tape cover. As you can see, that's why we put this tape right here, so that this won't fly off. If you don't do that, you have to hold it with your finger, and just a little bit of tape will help you with that. When you put the cover back down, just make sure it goes straight down. Line it up. There shouldn't be any resistance. And that one's in. Grab onto both halves, flip it around, and start putting in your screws. Doesn't really matter what order you put them in, but I like to put the middle one first. How much should you tighten? Not too much. Remember, we're dealing with plastic here, so just nice and snug. That's why the smallest screwdriver you can use, the better. Just nice and snug. You don't need to over torque them. Five screws total. Okay, that's got the tape together. We check our work, make sure we don't see any open seams around. Looks good. We try out our flap, pushing the button with the fingernail. Looking good. The tape is nice and straight. And we're done here. We can go ahead and get rid of this little piece of tape. And just for good measure, as a final step, okay, all the tape is off. Go ahead and open the flap. Get your microfiber cloth and wipe it off in one direction, just in case we got any dirt in there. Once, twice in one direction, and that's it. We're done. Okay, and this tape is no longer Practical Magic. It is now our rescued copy of Space Camp. Hope you found the video informative and helpful in preserving your BHS collection. Thank you for watching.